Welcome to this month's Panalytics webinar. Thank you for joining us. I'm Daniel Perkins, the Business Development Manager here at Panalytics. If you have any questions or ideas during the session, please share these by typing them into the questions box that's located in your webinar control panel. We are recording this session and registrants will receive the recording and slides after the webinar. Pricing is one of the most important decisions business people make. It will directly affect your bottom line and strongly influences demand for your product and services. Pricing advisory projects can be both an art and a science. So in this webinar, we will look at the ways of arriving at a sensible price for your advisory projects, as well as how you can advise your clients on the subject of price. Once again, welcome everyone. I'll now hand you over to Mark, CEO of Panalytics.
Thanks, Dan, and welcome everyone. Yes, wonderful to be with you for the next just slightly short of an hour. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy post-Australia Day weekend week, and hope you've made a great start to the year, and this is the year where you accomplish brilliant things. We had an early start here at Panalytics. This is the second webinar of the year. Hopefully some of you got to hear Colin with Alan Weiss a couple of weeks ago. That was a fine performance. Well done to both of them. But today we're talking pricing, and that's exciting too. And we've got a really good attendance today across Australia and New Zealand, and looking forward to the session. Now there's 4 things I'd like to be doing today. One is a reminder of why this is in fact important, and then what are the factors which influence price, which help us to make sensible pricing decisions. And we'll look at a case study because after all, we can talk conceptually about these things, but if we look at some ideas in action, it can help to amplify our approach here. And then we'll look at some support materials, things which can help you to be better in your businesses with pricing. But not only that, because I want to set a little challenge up front here. I'd like to feel that some of you will actually take some of this material and you will build into your advisory practices the ability to advise clients on price. Okay, now some of you might be thinking, but I don't know enough about it yet. Well, that's fine, but you know, it's a journey. It starts somewhere. It's about building the credentials and also the confidence to go out boldly to your clients and say, listen, I can help you. That's what we'd like to get out of today. Let's get right into it. Why is this important for advisors? You know, I put advisors there. I could have put accountants. Actually, it's important for all businesses. It doesn't matter what industry you're in, what you sell, who you sell to. Pricing is absolutely critical because it drives profitability. If we could go back last year and increase our prices retrospectively by 5%, what would happen? Revenue would go up 5%, and so would the bottom line go up by an equal amount. There's no cost of an increase in price, right? So we can't say that for other investments we might make in marketing, in sales, in product, etc. So it really impacts the bottom line if we get this right. And what we do find with advisors is they're a little intimidated and nervous by questions of price. And so when they have to deliberate and come up with a price, they take time and they get muddled, and they're not sure if it should be fixed or hourly or a combination or contingency and all that stuff. So we want to try and be able to price things quickly because we sell better when we price things quickly, and we'd like our team members to be able to participate in this as well. Not make the only person in the firm who can really do pricing is the senior partner, so we have to go to him or her every time. That's not what we want, right? And this will bring predictability among our clients and among our team. And that's a good thing. But I repeat that I think there's more. There's a source of revenue here for accountants, because if you can grasp some of the concepts we're going to discuss today, some of the tools, I think you can reach out to some of your clients, not all, and say, look, I can help you build your business. I can advise you on your business. And so I'd like to get paid for it. So those are the 2 things we're focused on here. How you can price better, not only recurring services, but advisory project-based services, but also the icing on the cake is that you can get paid for advising your clients on price. That's the goal for today, right? So In Panalytics, we believe in frameworks and context. Everything we talk about should be seen within some sort of philosophy. And I always spend just a minute going through this. And I would like you to think what your philosophy is as a business. If I were your client and you were pitching to me, how would you present your understanding of the market and what you do? Here's how we do it. So clients are absolutely critical of importance. Without them, we cannot exist. And we do like to understand their attributes. Are they big? Are they small? Are they growing? Many employees, few employees, revenue size, industry. Where are they located? How many offices? These are the kinds of attributes which give us some context for where they are in their development. But we also like to understand the aquarium in which they swim, right? If your client's a fish and you know that the aquarium is big or small or full of juicy nutrients or full of sharks or other fun fish or not so fun fish, right? If we can understand the market in which they exist, we can really get deep insights into what's driving them. And that's really about their customers, our clients' customers. Who do they sell to? And what do those customers want? And who do they compete with? Because unfortunately or fortunately, we're not on our own. None of our businesses are on our own. We need to understand the competitive environment. So that gives us a quick sense of where the clients are today. But where do they want to be? Their aspirations, right? This is often expressed through a vision statement, perhaps goals. And in our experience, those goals resolve themselves into some of these ideas: top line growth, bottom line growth, efficiency or capacity, and impact on the community. Lifestyle might be working less, it might be working differently. And succession, because every single business will undertake a succession event at some point. It's just a matter of time. Why don't we plan for that? And why don't we drive it rather than have it happen to us? That's not smart. And it's against those aspirations that our clients make plans, and we help them make plans. Those plans tend to fit into one of 5 business areas: getting new clients, right? And then keeping those clients, keeping them happy, selling them more stuff, having sound processes and planning and HR and finance and so on. And team development, because we rely on people to drive our businesses forward through their energy and dedication, right? And we do need a robust set of products which is relevant to the market and which we can deliver on. In Panalytics, we have a number of solutions which support clients in the execution of these plans. But look at that last column. Do you see price evaluator? That's a lot of what we're going to focus on today. You see, price for us fits in this area of product. It's like an attribute of your product. It helps you to express the value of your product. That's a very important word today, value. And we sometimes advise clients through our courses and our coaching, and we're ultra focused on data and measuring and some other things. So that's the world from a Panalytics perspective, right? We're over here in this developing products area and using the tool Price Evaluator and some other methodologies that we have. Okay, now let's get into those factors that drive price. And the first one, and frankly, the one I'm going to spend the most time on, is this one called value. The others I'm going to shoot through. By the way, when preparing this webinar, I realized that there is enough material here for about 23 hours of work, but I felt it would be a little bit of an imposition to ask you to spend 23 hours with me. So we're going to keep this just to 55 minutes, but we are going to just refer to a couple of concepts, and I'm happy to shed more light on those if there's interest. But onto value creation, right? Because it's our thesis that if we understand the value we deliver, then we can really get tight on pricing, and it'll help a whole lot of other things like selling and marketing and communicating and delivering as well. So what is this value idea? Well, I want you to do something for me. Think of a close friend or a relative or a spouse or a lover or your mum or someone that you know very well, okay? Have you got their picture in your mind? All right, now I'm going to ask you, what is it that they value? What do they value? Okay? In the case of my mum, she values taking her granddaughter to the shops. That's a fun thing for her to do. Now, how do I know that? I know that because I have extensive knowledge of mum and my daughter over many years. I've asked them, I've watched them, I've interacted with them. with independently or with other people, we have a lot of knowledge of the people that are close to us, right? And it's therefore not difficult to answer the question as to what they value. So where does this sit with our clients? If we had the same degree of knowledge of our clients, what drives them, what matters to them, we would be very close to being able to establish what they value, and we would be close to delivering that. But we have to deliver that, in the case of our clients, not our mums, in the language of business, right? This is not the same as the language of finance, the language of audit, the language of tax, the language of accounting. Those are different languages spoken in different countries, right? For these purposes here, if we really want to communicate our value, we should speak the language of business. That's really important, because it's then we can establish our relevance and the impact that we can have, and that will resolve itself into an obvious expression of value for which we can charge handsomely. Okay, sound a little bit conceptual? I hope you're getting the idea of that. Let's drill in and put some flesh on the skeleton, right? So I want you now, you thought of a person, I'd like you to think of a client of yours, one of your clients. They're all important, of course, but one that you wouldn't like to lose. So maybe a more important one than others, right? And I'm going to ask you across about 7 or 8 questions here. What do they get from you? And I'm talking the language of business, not what tasks do you complete for them, but what do they get in terms of value to drive their businesses, right? Now, the good news is you don't have to answer all of these, yes to all of them. You just have to choose 1 or 2. So here's some ideas. Are you saving them money? Because if you are, that's going straight to the bottom line. You're making them more profitable, right? Is that what you do for this particular client? Or are you helping them to grow their top line, their revenue? Are you enabling them to free up resources, which drives more leads, more sales, more upselling, more client retention? Is that what you do for your clients or this particular client? Perhaps you're more focused on enterprise value, the value of their business. Maybe this client is someone who wants to sell their business at some point, and they say, I want to take $3 million off the table when I sell this. Help me get there. And you're focused on quantifying the business value and expressing the business value. Perhaps you're helping your client to mitigate business risk. All of our businesses face risk, right? And you are mitigating that risk in some way. Perhaps you're helping them with peace of mind. You know, our clients comprise people. They're not just business apparatus. They comprise people. Those people worry about stuff. They lie awake at night. They face risks. But if you can alleviate some of those risks, you're offering some value. And perhaps you expose your clients to greater business opportunity. They might be selling product A and B in a certain market now, but perhaps you're exposing them to new markets with growth opportunities or new partnerships which can drive new opportunity for them. Maybe you offer them prestige, a feeling of well-being and a good reputation. Maybe by interacting with you, that's what they get. Or maybe you're helping them to improve their lifestyles. Do you have any clients who want to go home earlier and work less, or they want to start retiring, or they don't want to have to do certain things in the business? Are you helping them with that by creating efficiencies? Perhaps, right? This is the expression of the language of business, which we need to embrace if we want to be advisors and get valued for it. So there's a whole lot of ways we can do these things, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but obviously tracking, analyzing expenses is a start on the cost reduction side. What about identifying those drivers of revenue, leads and sales conversion rates and all that, in order to help them improve their sales strategies? What about, you understand business valuations, so what about understanding the components of those and helping them put plans in place to optimize each of those components? What about helping them plan or create strategy which will mitigate future risk, right? Or helping them to understand possible changes in regulatory frameworks and financial frameworks and so on, which can help people sleep better at night. Perhaps you have contacts, or you can analyze and quantify market opportunity and express this to your clients in a way that they can action those opportunities. And perhaps people want to work with you because you've got a brilliant client base and you have access to all kinds of contacts which can improve the way they do business, and that drives their reputation. And perhaps you're really good on efficiency because you can save time and redundancies in their organization to help them lead better lives, right? So these are some of the things which you know how to do, but unless it's linked to that all-important left-hand column as to what the customer gets from working with you, then you might be an accountant who is focused on completing tasks, not an advisor who is focused on guidance and mentorship. And so that's what we have to work on. I went and looked at some of your websites. Yes, your websites. And I looked at the things that you talk about. Do you recognize some of these words on your websites? Advanced reporting, budgeting, KPI development. I saw pricing. I was quite excited by that. Congratulations if you're already offering pricing. Cash flow analysis. That's a old stalwart, right? And some other things. Now, I'm not saying these are not worthy. Of course they're worthy, but unless they are expressed in ways which drive those business drivers and expressed in the language of business, you're going to have a hard time getting people to think about you as an advisor and not an accountant, because they will not see the value that you offer. They will not quantify it. So that's the language of business. Let's do one more thing. Now, I spent some time with a firm just a week ago, and we looked at this list, costs and revenue and all that. And I asked them, I said, okay, there were 3 accountants in the room. I said, now I want you to think of a client that you have, one of your clients who is solving one of these problems for their customers. And at first they thought, what on earth are you talking about, Mark? But as we thought about it some more, they said, oh yeah, okay, I've got a client like the guys who sell the human resource software, the automation software, which is all about reducing costs at their clients because you don't need as many people to manage payroll and benefits. Yeah, so they're in the business of reducing costs, right? And then someone else said, well, actually, we've got that other client who does the marketing consulting. They create content which drives leads for their clients, and that leads to new revenue. So they're in the business of increasing revenue. Someone else said, well, my client is actually in public relations. They write speeches for CEOs of big companies. And whenever there's a disaster or a problem in those companies, they manage the public relations. And that drives up the share price, or at least stops the share price from plummeting. So they're all about business value for their listed clients, right? And someone else said, well, hang on, I've got a client who sells insurance. And that's all about risk mitigation, right? Being ready for risk. And then another client they came up with vetted employees in the hospitality industry to ensure that you're completely compliant with regulations. And that creates peace of mind for their compliance, so they're not falling foul of the law. And another client they had is a research company which researches Asian countries, and if you want to launch your products there, the return on your investment and so on. So they're all about surfacing and quantifying business opportunities, right? They were getting quite excited by this at this stage as they started thinking about how their clients deliver on these business drivers, right? And then the guys who sell those fancy red Italian cars, they're all about the image and reputation of their clients, right? By the way, you don't have to be one of these. You can be multiple of these. One doesn't exclude the other, right? And then they're the guys who sell the diet plan, post-Christmas and Australia Day diet plan. It's not that. I made that up. And but they're all about the health of their customers, right? Which leads to improved lifestyle and improved well-being. So these accountants got excited because they started thinking of their clients in these terms, and they have resolved to reach out to their clients and start discussions around price with a view to strengthening the language and seeing how they can support to strengthen the client's propositions in these areas, right? Now, let's do a quick poll because it's time for you to do a little bit of work. Do you fully understand the business value your clients get from you? You can quantify it and fully understand it. Kristen, let's open the poll, please. So you might say, absolutely, 100%. We know exactly what they get and we know the dollar value and all that. Some of you might say, no, kind of, but there's room for improvement. Some of you will say that it's weak. And some of you will say that actually we never thought about that. We're more about completing tasks on behalf of our clients, and it's not something we've done. Please take a moment. I'm just going to give you a few seconds there to look through this. Kristen is gathering that data. I'm looking to see where the data is coming through. Okay, I'm seeing a lot in the area of room for improvement. That is the winning title right now. One of you said absolutely, congratulations. A few of you have said no, not part of our culture, but room for improvement and weak are the areas that we're seeing the biggest response. Thanks for your energetic responses there. I want to move on from that, and I want to look at factors, other factors. We've talked value, right? We could talk about that for another hour, by the way, but we've talked some value. Let's look at some other factors. Now, here's the idea of being premium. What does premium mean in your business? You know, why do some large accounting firms get a box at the cricket or at the footy or whatever, right? Because there's a perception of a premium offering. Your clients may have different ideas on that. Gift wrapping is a very simple idea. Offering free servicing for your vehicle in the first year. What can your clients do and what can you do to bundle your products in ways that they are perceived to be more premium? And here's an important one. Is the next project you sell to this particular client, is that the end? Is that the end game, right? Or is it the start of a process whereby you can monetize the relationship over many years to come? By the way, it's not only about money, this long-term thinking. What about their reputation, right? Is there a client that you would love to have just because an association with them, it would be very powerful for your business? That's bringing in long-term thinking to your pricing discussions. Now, have you ever had a client who's under investigation by the tax authorities? He's got a nasty letter and someone wants to visit and he's thinking, I could have done things a little bit differently, and he's come to you for help. What you might find is that there is a unique factor that's influencing his demand and his lack of price sensitivity at this point, and also his concern about timing. We need to get this done quickly. He may have a sense of urgency, right? Have you ever paid too much for an air ticket over the Christmas holidays or something, or seen a Broadway ticket available at $600 at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but $150 at 6 o'clock when they're trying to sell it later? Those are unique factors in markets which drive demand and heavily influence pricing. What about the competition, right? Many of you will say, well, there's a lot of accountants out there and we compete in quite a severe competitive environment, right? Now, I like to think of this as understanding the range of fees. Who are the premium providers in your industry? Who is the low end? And where do you fit? And why? What are the answers to those questions? Why are you more expensive than someone else and less expensive than someone else, right? I'd like to ask you another question here in the form of a poll. You factor in competitor pricing when deciding price. It forms an important part of your pricing decisions. Would you say absolutely? We fully understand where we sit relative to the competition, or we kind of know, or actually we don't really know where we sit across our services now, and actually no interest. We don't think about our competition at all. I'm going to ask Kristen to open up this poll to see what your ideas are here. Okay, thank you for your enthusiastic responses. Okay, again, somewhat seems to be the strongest response, and not really is in second place. Over 50% seem to be saying somewhat. A couple at absolutely. Well done. I think that's important that you have a clear sense of that, right? So we're going to, B is again the winner. If you're at the casino today, B is the place to be. I'm going to move on from that poll to the next factor. Now, look, this is where a lot of people start. This is the cost plus factor. They think, well, look, what we got to do here is really see what it costs us to deliver our solution and then mark it up. And that's where it gets hard for them. Right now, I'm not saying there's no value in that. There is value. You should know your break-even situation on a particular project, especially complex projects. But we need to be a little bit careful of this and not make this the driver, because we will miss opportunity. So whilst I see value in it, I don't think that it should drive our decisions. And by the way, people make mistakes here because we spend a lot of money marketing and selling big projects. I've been involved in advisory projects which have taken a year to sell, right? That's 23 lunches, 15 visits to the club, visits to their business, multiple proposals, talking to subcontractors, getting consent from people, getting legal agreements done, and all that stuff, right? Those are costs which need to be factored in if you're working with the cost plus approach. Here's another one, factor which drives pricing. Would you rather have $5,000 today or $7,000 in 90 days? Okay, you've probably got an answer for that. What if I said, or $7,000 in 120 days? Would that change your answer? Right? These are matters of payment terms, and this is interestingly linked into pricing, because when we recover our money and how much access to it will influence the outcomes. And this is also where we have that discussion about what if it's fixed price and all of my money comes at the end of the project, contingent on a few variables, some of which I can control, but maybe some of them I can't control so well. That means the risk has shifted to you and away from the client. The way to deal with that is hourly rates, but your client then takes on the risk. And is your client willing to take on the risk? Are you prepared to compromise your client's experience? These are things which influence your view of payment terms and therefore pricing. And I've made the mistake in the past of getting too complicated with pricing arrangements. I once sold a project to a large US bank where we needed to get data. This was a direct marketing project. We needed data from multiple sources, and we had to put it in a big database and then model that data to understand how many leads were generated from different sources, from our activities, not the competitors' activities. And it was so complicated that no one understood really how much we should get paid. And we ended up coming up with some alternative agreement. The client wasn't very happy because there was a lack of transparency and they didn't know how to budget and all that. So you really want to keep these things as simple as you can for the clients. Discounts and promotions. And I can hear some of you saying, what? Discounts and promotions? We're accountants, professional services. We don't offer discounts. That would undermine our credibility as professionals. Well, I don't agree. And I feel that we're seeing a lot of examples where accountants are intelligently engaging in promotional activity, especially in the early phases of a relationship where they want to offer, let's call it entry pricing, so that clients become familiar with them and they work with them in the longer term. And we can share a lot of information and examples of that. But certainly I do not think it's off the table for professional services. It is certainly not off the table for your clients who might be offering buy one, get one free and putting timelines around that and all kinds of other discount and promotional opportunities, which you may be able to help them craft so that they can drive additional revenue in their business. Let's have a little think about that. I'm interested in your views on discounts and promotions. Are they a part of your pricing strategy at all? If so, perhaps they're integral to your pricing strategy. You would say, absolutely, that's what we do. Some of you will say, well, we kind of do it sometimes, it depends. And some of you say, well, we kind of did it once or twice maybe, and then we kind of lost interest. And some of you will say, never. We've never done that. Let's get a quick feel, please, for this room as to how you approach the opportunities around discounts and promotions, right? So I've got a couple of nevers. I've got quite a few occasionally. So it doesn't seem that it's something integrated. Interestingly, we did this webinar in the US and there was much more tendency to embrace this. A few absolutely's and a couple of somewhats, but occasionally is winning out here, but somewhat is almost equal, right? So it's in that middle range. Maybe there's more to do here. You know, I kind of feel this is a bit binary. You either do it or you don't. So it's kind of an A or a D, and I think both are plausible answers, but it shouldn't be something that is that is half-baked, right? That's my view. I'm going to move on. Thanks for your participation, by the way. I appreciate that. Now, the final thing, the final factor that we just need to clarify here, we don't want to have to make this stuff up every time we price a project, right? We don't have to start from zero and think, well, how are we going to do this one? This is different to the last one. We want policies and guidelines which can direct us on how we price. So we don't have to have the same conversations again. That starts to create order and organization and predictability and transparency. And it starts to educate people on how they should go about pricing, which is a good thing. Now, look at this list. This is what we've just been through. Hey, just work with me here and imagine you're sitting with that client that you really like, where you feel that there's more potential value, right? And you've sat down with their financials. You've got their financials. You've looked at the historical revenues by product or by location or by store. And you've said, I'd like to speak with you and generate some ideas around how you communicate your value and how you can generate a premium offering about what you offer, and how you can monetize your client relationships over longer periods of time, and whether there are any seasonal or timing factors which we can exploit with pricing, like the airlines do, to influence demand. And what about a study of your competition to see where you fit? Often people are flippant and they say, oh yeah, no, we know that, and they don't even know who their competition is. We need to get more disciplined about that. And then let's look into cost plus, because you may think that you're making money on this deal, but actually when you take in some hidden costs, you're not. And what about payment terms? What are the options here? Look at the rest of your client base and think what smart things they're doing. How can you leverage that into this particular client? And if you can help them to be more simple with the models they use around pricing, that's helpful. And there's a whole list. We sent a pricing guide around earlier this month. Please get in touch with me if you'd like to see that. But it has many different ways to tackle discounts and promotions. And what if we wrap all of that up in a policy? Because you're spending way too much time thinking about this stuff. We need to move on and make it a part and parcel of our business. So what an interesting conversation I think that would be to have with some of your clients. You can do this. We have a client doing this in the form of a workshop, like a 3 or 4 hour pricing workshop for which they're getting paid nicely. And by the way, it always spawns some additional revenue, right? And then sometimes they check in and they say, let's see what's changed in pricing each quarter and review that. So there's various ways to structure these engagements, right? But you have to start the conversation. You have to start the conversation in the language of business. You have to show your understanding and your knowledge of the client to emphasize the value that you can offer. That's where the opportunity lies, right? Okay, now I said we'd look at a case study, and we'll do that quite quickly. Thank you for your attention and patience. Here's a case study. This unfolded in the United States the latter half of last year, September, October, November. The accountant, which is a Panalytics client, is located in East Coast of the United States, just outside of Boston. 6-partner, 34-person firm. $3.25 million revenue in the calendar year ending December 2018. Quite compliance heavy, but with aspirations to rapidly grow that advisory business. We're delighted to be working with them. Between Colin and I, we're absolutely focused on helping to build advisory businesses in 2020 and beyond. That's our mantra. So this is a perfect opportunity for us. And this particular client has some experience in transaction advisory work. They have hired an investment banker, former investment banker, to participate in their practice. So that's where they see their future as they build out advisory services. Now, their client is also located in that area outside of Boston, 3 offices, and they're in the medical device industry. You probably know that that area is rich in biotech and medical device and so on. $35 million in revenue. They're about 6 years old. They raised a lot of capital when they started, had rapid growth, and the growth has stabilized a little bit at around 8% the previous year. But with these numbers, they have aspirations to publicly list their business in the latter part of this year or early next year. So what we're talking about here, do you remember we talked about attributes right at the beginning in the Panalytics philosophy, there is a smattering of some attributes, which gives you a little bit of a picture of who these clients are and what they want to accomplish. It gives you some context against which you can think about where you can add some value. So the project that arose at this client for our client, the accountant, was as follows. They had acquired a couple of businesses and therefore manufacturing facilities, one in the southern part of the United States, and they had started to utilize that production facility. But there was a perception that it was inefficient, that there was use of old antiquated machinery, which was no longer viable in the business. There was personnel mismatch with what they were trying to do, and they wanted to rationalize this. And the CFO was driving this. And he actually said, I think we can shave about 4% off annual costs. And this is good for us because in our IPO, we need to show that we're a well-run, well-managed business, which uses our assets and our cash very wisely. And so we need to get really clear on these issues. And so he wanted to start in this factory and rationalize costs there. By the way, it was quite a good set of money because the annual production costs in that facility were around $4.5 million that year. So 4%, $180,000 potential saving is not to be scoffed at. So that was the challenge presented by the accountant. And to credit the accountant, they extracted that information from the client very intelligently because, as you know, clients don't necessarily just set this out on a platter. So what to do? Well, Panalytics Price Evaluator is a tool which, here's the theory behind the tool. I'm going to tell you the theory because I don't want you to have to read that stuff, right? But that's a visual of the tool. So at the one end of the scale, at the one end of the continuum is what money we need to recover in order to break even on a project. What are our costs, basically? That's the one end of the continuum, right? The other end of the continuum is how much value does the client derive from working from us, right? How much value in their business do they derive? That's the other end of the continuum. And logically, our price must sit somewhere on that continuum, but where? So what Price Evaluator says is if this project and this client is of great value to you, then you're going to price it at the lower end because you want to monetize this relationship over a longer period of time. If, however, this client is of no value to you, right? No interest to you. You don't want to work with this client really. You're going to price it way up the top, right? Does that make sense? So we are trying to find a way of quantifying the value of this project and then having that settle into a pricing thesis. By the way, let me say before we look at some numbers, there is no formula. If you're waiting for this amazing, incredible formula, this algorithm which tells you the correct price for every assignment, I'm sorry to disappoint you. But what we can do is create some methodology and some intelligence around factoring in all the things we should consider and then arriving at a thesis on price, which we can choose to either adopt or not, right? And that's what we're about to do here. So let's look first at the cost of delivery. And this rather traditional US accountant, US accounting business, they said, well, here's the kind of people that we're going to need to get onto this assignment once they understood the scope of work. They tend to charge out these amounts here. And using the third model, as I say, this was quite a traditional firm in this regard. The costs of an hour of work of any of those people are referenced there. The charge out rate in the middle column and the costs in the right-hand column. And they expected to spend about those number of hours on this assignment, which meant that the costs associated with each person, remember this is the costs, not the charge out rate, but the costs to deliver on this project would be that which adds up to a total of just over $17,000. In other words, if that's what we build for this project, we'll break even. Who wants to do that? No one wants to do that, but at least it's a line in the sand, right? Using cost plus analysis. Now, let's go to the other end of the spectrum, the value that the client can derive. And we had this fascinating discussion with the client around where they think the client may potentially derive some value, many of which we eliminated, right? You see, we're not going to create more revenue or profit or enterprise value for this client through this project. We're going to study their efficiencies and look for cost-cutting opportunities in a factory. We're not going to generate more money, so that gets a 0. But the cost savings, absolutely. If we can figure that out, we might actually not just save the money in year 1, but actually in perpetuity. Although in this case, we just said, let's look at year 1. We're not trying to increase this for the sake of it, right? Someone said, well, positive HR outcomes, it's better if people are working in a more constructive environment. Well, maybe, but how do we quantify that? Too difficult. Move on. Improve governance, because remember, we're trying to do an IPO. So if we can get really tight on our processes and all that, yeah, but hard to put a value on that. Move on, right? But refocusing resources and opportunity costs. So what they were going to do, they knew that if they could redeploy, they weren't going to fire anyone, they were going to redeploy them into more productive endeavors elsewhere in the business. And that would create some value elsewhere. And so we did view that as something of value. Reputation, nah, not necessarily. But the template, remember this business had 3 or 4 factories, and the template for review of pricing was something that they could use and use again in other facilities. If they didn't have this, then they would have to go and pay someone to create it for them. So there was value coming out of this project for that reason, right? And then we put some numbers around that. Hey, look, there's the $180,000, which is the 4% of the $4.5 million, which this client told us about. We didn't have to come up with that. The client speculated that that was the number, right? And we did some workings to come up with the other numbers there, which meant that the total potential value to the client here was coming in at about $300,000. Okay, now we've got some parameters. We've got the 2 ends of our continuum established. Where do we sit between 17,000 and 295? Now, before I show you the modeling here, right? If this was a client that you really don't want to work for, you know why? Because the top executives are all going to jail, and everyone implicated in this business is going to jail, and you're going to be implicated, and it's just a nasty, horrible client that you just don't want to work with ethically or for whatever reasons. Well, you probably would say no, or you would say, I'll do this for $500,000, right? At some point, it might become worth it, right? There's another end of the scale here, which is there a client you would work for free? Is there? For some people, that might be Beyonce. For other people, it might be a head of state. For other people, it might be a musician. Who knows, right? But there are people that I just want to work with those people because they're cool and it gives me energy and I like to do that kind of stuff. And now we can actually go even below cost plus, right? That's not a good long-term business philosophy, by the way. But I just want to explain the concept. So let's look at the modeling here. I won't spend too much time on this. The first thing is what's important in the business at this particular time with regard to our clients and the projects we do. What do we most value? So we came up with a list. Lifetime value. Now remember, we're talking about a Massachusetts-based accountant. They do want long-term client relationships. Advisory work is much more productive if we're in long-term relationships, right? I've heard that somewhere before. I'm not sure where. It's much better to work with people over a long period of time to monetize the relationship. So they value that. And they do want reputable clients, right? And they do want to build their reputation in the biotech and medical device industry. So this was something that they valued. And this was highly strategic because remember, cost evaluation might lead to that IPO decision, which they are equipped to deal with. Remember, they hired that investment banker guy. Risk, they don't want to take on projects which are too weird, which are too strange and too risky. They didn't want to do that. And they looked at the potential payment terms, not a problem here, because this was a good payer who would pay something up front, right? And this firm was big enough, the medical device company was big enough that they engaged some other accountants as well. So that was a competitive environment in which they were working. So getting the business was important to them. Let's get this because we are then the front runners for the next project, right? And that influenced their view. And do we have the people to do this? Yes, they do. Because remember the list that we looked at on the previous slide, they have those people. So they were ready for this project, right? These were the things they valued in building their business with certain clients and with certain projects. But you know what? Take a look at that list. Not everything there is equally valuable. By the way, this is not the list. This is a list. This is a list which made sense in this opportunity at this point in time. If you went and did this with your client, what would your list look like? It might have some of those factors on, but not all of them. It might have some other factors on, because you've got to get into what matters to your business. Remember, this is value. This is knowledge. This is understanding what matters in your business at this particular time. Using a Panalytics model, we allocated importance across these different dimensions here. We allocated 100 chips, right? And what you can see is lifetime value of the client was considered the most important, followed by client reputation, and then equal importance in strategic opportunity and project risk, and so on, right? That adds up to 100. And then we looked specifically at this very project, and we asked to what extent it delivers on those particular dimensions. To what extent are we going to succeed? Lifetime value here, yeah, we'd like to say it's brilliant and we're going to work with them for years and years, but we can't honestly say that 100% now. So let's give it a 5 out of 7. But client reputation, almost perfect, right? 6 out of 7. Strategic opportunity, absolutely 6 out of 7. Project risk, you know what? We haven't done as many of these as we want, and getting down to understand all of the processes around a factory which builds medical devices, we're going to have to actually figure that out. And so there is a little bit of risk here, and so on. They did this analysis to arrive at an appraisal of this project. And if you add up, if you do some math here, simple math, right? If you multiply the relative importance, the 25 by the score it got on that scale, you see 25 times 5 is 125. 20 times 6 is 120. That's how the mathematics works. Pretty simple. And if you add up those scores, you're getting a total of 520. The maximum score here is 700. Now that's telling me that this is a pretty interesting project. This is a project we want for all of those reasons that we talked about before, right? Reputation of the client, lifetime value. This is something we want to do. And so we plug all that data into the model, and it arrives at some recommendations, which I've summarized here. There's a lot more to look at, but I've summarized it here. So we remember the cost, there's the two ends of the continuum, right? And plug in the numbers, and it's saying that the indicative price around $54,000. Now think about that. If they went in with their third model, right? We're slightly over that, more than they would charge there. But it's a long way from the value, but we want to recover that value in future projects over time, and we want to benefit from getting this work now over many years to come. And you know, someone asked me a question from Victoria, very good question. How do you go out now? So you pitch up at the client and you say, this is what we're thinking of charging you, right? And they say, oh, well, that's kind of a lot. That's more than we were thinking for just a little project like this. So what about the return on investment analysis? You now are equipped to say to them, look, well, we estimate that you're going to get $5.44 for every dollar you spend on this project. That's a great return for a project that's going to unfold in just 90 days. And by the way, in fact, we think we're underestimating, because you said, Mr. Client, you said 4% of $4.5 million can be saved here, right? But that's potentially over many years. In our modeling, we've only looked at that over 1 year. So now you're motivating for what you can accomplish for this client, but you're doing it in the language of business, right? Not how smart you are, how good your processes are, or how well you understand analysis or data. You're doing it in the language of business. And Price Evaluator has empowered you to do that together with your considerable skills. I want to finish up soon. Thank you for your attention, by the way, and for spending time with Panalytics. We have strengthened our Learning Hub considerably. This is the place where we keep a whole lot of support materials, because some of you may be thinking, yeah, but wow, I need to go and do like a big course on this stuff. And well, I hope you're thinking that. I'll tell you why in a second. I need to really go and study all this material. Where is all this material? Well, the Learning Hub is an increasingly comprehensive resource. Here's a small portion of things we have on pricing. Some are orientations where we look at the big picture ideas, and we create exercises that you can do internally or with your clients, or workshops you can do with your clients to surface the issues that we've discussed earlier in this webinar. Best practices. Don't try and read that, way too small, but it names some of the best prices in best practices in pricing, which you can implement into your business or your clients' businesses. More of that. Particular articles and methodologies and templates on pricing up front and value pricing. You know, I just want to say that I just think we need to be bold with this stuff. I think people get overly caught up on certain terms, like I need to learn a value price. There's so much more to it than that. And if we just delve in a little bit deeper, we can create methodologies and not oversimplify things. Be cautious about oversimplifying. We've got a lot of good feedback on Learning Hub recently. I don't necessarily want to read this to you, but this person says, I'm lost for words. I guess that's a good thing when your client says that. The most cutting edge technology I've seen, the layout and design. Thank you for these kind words. This is someone who's spent quite a lot of time on our new courses. Learning Hub is going through a major refresh, and I hope you get back to see it. Better direction and structure, courses to grow my business. Here are some of the things. That's also an Australia-based client who's using Learning Hub. I really like this one because look what they say. Well, it's short for one thing, but look, they say, loving the great marketing tools and courses for clients. Here is an accountant who is exposing their clients to these courses, right? Not just using them internally, because these are designed to be consumed and used by your clients. They're not just about creating advisory businesses for accountants, right? And one more. Again, extension for client courses, right? But I do need to dedicate the time and resources. And that's that's an important comment, you know, because this does take time and resources. In no way will Panalytics tell you that there's some magic wand which you just wave and you're an advisor or you're a pricing expert. You've got to work at it. You've got to develop yourselves and your methodologies. Speaking of which, okay, a couple minutes. What we're doing, and I talk mostly for Colin and I and our extended organization, we're very focused on courses around helping accountants build advisory businesses. This is a main driver for us this year. They are very curriculum focused, right? They are very they're crafted in ways which have a very particular syllabus that we want to expose people to. And we recognize that different people learn in different ways: one-on-one sessions, group activity, assessments, field work, etc. So they incorporate different approaches, and we must continue to measure your progress, which is the importance of assessments and then feedback across those assessments. And then successful participants in the course will be certified, which is a way of developing not just the principles of your firm, but maybe other people in the firm. This, by the way, pricing is one of 11 courses which all relate to building advisory businesses, the product development side, the language of business, which is a beautiful course which captures a lot of that stuff that we said before: product development around goal setting, around data use, around marketing, selling, delivering, and building teams for advisory services. Now, these unfold over 12 weeks, right? And we start with an orientation to contextualize this. Where does this fit? And what are your particular goals? And what do you want to get out of this, right? But then we must customize it for your firm, right? Because your firm is different to other firms. You have a different set of products, a different set of capabilities, a different set of clients, a different market, a different pricing regime needs to apply to your firm. And we should figure that out up front and resolve it into some internal plan of action, right? And then role plays and workshops done internally, for which there is very specific feedback and mentorship provided. We love this part because our clients say to us, okay, listen, I've got this advisory opportunity. It relates, let's say, to pricing, and I need to prepare for it. What do I do? How am I going to articulate and present myself as the advisor that they want to work with? What is the process to that? And we build them up to that. They go into the field, conduct the meeting or meetings, and there's extensive feedback. We've even participated in some of those meetings with some clients. And then, of course, the assessment, because did you achieve what you wanted? And how do we debrief and how do we set a plan for future? This, by the way, is one of 11 modules, as I say, right? There's a whole range of other things. But since we're talking pricing today, I'm telling you about the pricing course. My colleague Colin Dunn is one of the principal architects of this and very involved in the delivery of this course. So, look, if you are interested in developing your own pricing practices, but also making this a feature of your particular business practice, or at least exploring it, right? Why not develop yourselves professionally? We have a brilliant offer on in the early stage of this year. We're not going to be able to do these offers for very long because, frankly, the demand is very high out of the US particularly, and to some degree in Europe as well. So we are offering offers because we want to get you into these courses. We want you to see exactly how we're approaching this. This is not yet another coaching deal. This is very focused and curriculum driven. If you're interested, please type pricing in the questions box. You'll get more information. We won't bother you too much, but we are dying to help you on this kind of stuff. Please give us that opportunity. Type pricing into the questions box for more information. And with that, I leave you with the idea that we have to be bold and brave as we go into the world of advisory solutions. We have to take risks and we have to try things. And I hope that you've learned something today which you can use either in your own business or you can use when talking to your clients. It's been a pleasure. I was thoroughly enjoyed spending this time with you today. I wish you a good end of the day. Remember to type pricing into the sheet, and I look forward to the next webinar. Thank you for your time. Back to you, Dan.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you to our attendees for taking the time to join us today. A reminder again, type pricing to sign up for our 12-week pricing course. And before we let you go, please take a few seconds to participate in the poll as well. Otherwise, we all look forward to seeing you as part of our next webinar, and we can't wait. Thanks, everyone.